XDT.
The president speaks to try to rally the nation as U.S. forces move into position for a long fight against terror. The number of missing at ground zero of the attacks rises dramatically above 6,000. Greenspan says the attacks stopped the U.S. economy, but that it will recover. And heroes find a haven of peace in a war zone.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. Special extended coverage of America Fights Back. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
And this is a special West Coast edition. Good evening. President Bush will appear tonight before a joint session of the House and Senate and a nationwide television audience. The president will ask the American people to support him in a long and costly war against terrorism. This comes as the nation is still stunned and struggling to recover from the murderous terror attacks in New York and Washington. Here's the latest. The president's speech will start in somewhat less than 30 minutes. In an unprecedented move, Vice President Cheney will not attend, it is said for security reasons. The U.S. is moving more military forces to the Persian Gulf and elsewhere in striking distance of Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran. Afghanistan's Taliban rulers are still refusing U.S. demands to turn over terrorist Osama bin Laden. Officials have raised the number of missing at ground zero in New York by more than 900 to well over 6,000 now. If you add the confirmed dead, the missing, and the injured at the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and in the Pennsylvania crash, the overall casualty toll of those killed or hurt in the attack on America tonight totals a staggering 13,000. On Wall Street, investors dumped more stock today. The Dow fell 382 points, the NASDAQ down 56. Since the terror attacks, the Dow and the NASDAQ have now lost about 13% of their value. President Roosevelt did it after the attack on Pearl Harbor, President Johnson after the assassination of President Kennedy. Tonight, President Bush will address Congress and the nation in a time of national emergency. CBS News Chief White House Correspondent John Roberts has advance word on some of what Mr. Bush will say. John?
Dan, this really will be a speech to rally a nation, to make the case for a long and sustained fight. The White House is fully aware that the president will be speaking not just to Congress and America, but the world.
President Bush will portray the campaign ahead as a war between freedom and fear. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists, he will tell the world. The president will urge the nation to be calm and resolute and explain who hates America and why.
He's going to really lay out this case for the American people as a fundamental foundation for what we're about to face.
And there was nothing to ease that challenge coming from Afghanistan today. Muslim clerics recommended Osama bin Laden leave their country while the ruling Taliban called for new talks with the U.S. But the administration rejected the overture and warned it's time for action, not words.
Voluntarily or involuntarily, we believe that Osama bin Laden has to be put under control and turned over to authorities who can bring him to justice. And it should be done rather quickly.
The rush to build a coalition against bin Laden will find British Prime Minister Tony Blair with the president tonight. Earlier at the White House, Saudi Arabia's foreign minister pledged his country's full support.
Everything that is within our capacity to fight this scourge of terrorism.
The United States will press Saudi Arabia for more help with intelligence gathering and to choke off financing that still flows to bin Laden's network. But the Saudis say they will not go after groups that oppose Israel, which could significantly limit their cooperation down the road.
In his address, the president will also announce the creation of a new Office of Homeland Security. The cabinet-level position will coordinate federal and state agencies. The goal? To identify weaknesses and avert future attacks. John Roberts, CBS News, the White House.
More than 5,000 U.S. Air Force Reserve and Air National Guard troops were ordered to active duty today. They're the first of up to 50,000 reservists already authorized for, quote, homeland defense, while regular forces are deployed overseas to fight the war, mainly to root out and get the terrorists, chief among them, Osama bin Laden. CBS's David Martin has been piecing together the likely U.S. mission. David?
Dan, officials expect the Taliban to keep trying to deflect the U.S. demand to turn over Osama bin Laden. claiming, for instance, he has fled the country or perhaps placing him under house arrest. But even if the Taliban were to surprise the U.S. and give up bin Laden, Secretary of State Powell said today that won't be enough.
Not just Osama bin Laden, but all of the other lieutenants and the infrastructure that exists within Afghanistan.
With B-2 bombers put on alert for nonstop missions from the U.S., B-1 bombers ordered to bases in the Persian Gulf, and B-52s being sent to the island of Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, that infrastructure of caves and training camps is likely to take a pounding, and likely to be raided by special forces, which also have been ordered to deploy.
The Rangers and the Special Operating Forces will play a prominent role in any campaign that we conduct.
A lot of forces are beginning to move. Navy jets flew out to the carrier Roosevelt as it steamed east toward the Persian Gulf. Aerial refueling tankers left the U.S. to set up flying gas stations for the combat aircraft that are sure to follow. All pieces to a military puzzle, but Defense Secretary Rumsfeld refuses to connect the dots.
I'm not going to provide specific details of who's doing what, when, and where. I just don't think it's helpful.
Who left today on what ordinarily would be a 6-month deployment will really be gone.
This is not a quick matter that's going to be over in a month or a year or even 5 years.
This operation was to have been called Infinite Justice, but that's being reconsidered now that U.S. officials have been told it offends Muslims who believe Allah is the only one who can dispense infinite justice. Dan?
From the Pentagon, David Martin. The official toll from the attack on New York's World Trade Center got worse today. Mayor Rudolph Giuliani made the announcement. CBS's Byron Pitts is on the scene with the latest. Byron?
Dan, late today, the number of missing jumped by nearly 1,000 as foreign countries reported the names of their missing citizens. So 6,333 people missing and presumed dead. Sobering numbers on a rain-soaked day. Buried beneath nearly 1 million tons of debris, the bodies of more people than live in many small towns across America. Adding to the misery, steady rainfall brought the rescue mission to a near standstill. Only the heaviest machines and ironworkers could operate in these conditions. It was simply too dangerous for rescue teams to work in the debris field.
The water adds weight to anything we're doing out there. It's going to turn that concrete dust back into hardened concrete. The slipping hazards have increased.
16 solid acres of death and despair, holding thousands of decaying bodies. But doctors say, unlike disasters in many third world countries, the bodies beneath this rubble should not pose a health hazard to the general public or to rescuers.
These people are healthy, and it's unlikely that they were carrying diseases that are easily transmissible from person to person.
In one more sign of historic bipartisan solidarity, some 40 U.S. senators toured the disaster site. The powerful and the famous have come to New York to offer their support, from legendary boxer Muhammad Ali to British Prime Minister Tony Blair, who lost up to 300 of his countrymen in the attack.
Your loss we count as our loss. Your struggle we take as our struggle.
Tonight, the official death toll stands at 241, and that number will surely rise. Byron Pitts, CBS News, New York.
FBI agents tracking thousands of leads reported hitting pay dirt on a number of fronts today, and officials tried to put down rumors and calm fears about a possible follow-up attack. CBS's Jim Stewart has the latest on the investigation. Jim?
Dan, reports are circulating that the terrorist hijackers and some accomplices were planning another action this Saturday. But officials say that although they don't totally discount the possibility, they have no firm evidence this is the case. The concern was prompted by the fact that a couple of the dead hijackers and a very small number of the people on the watch list had booked flights for that date.
Meanwhile, outside Shanksville, Pennsylvania, FBI Director Robert Mueller and Attorney General John Ashcroft got a close look at the crash site of United Flight 93, which has given up the most evidence of the 4 hijacked planes thus far. And today, for the first time, revealed they have isolated snippets of conversation between the hijackers caught on Flight 93's cockpit voice recorder.
We and the NTSB are in the process of
transcribing, and in certain cases translating the dialogue, what little dialogue there is on that voice recorder.
In other developments, officials now confirm several of the hijackers apparently had false identification and their true names are still not known. Some of the identification reportedly was stolen from law-abiding Saudi Arabian citizens. There is no evidence thus far that the 19 dead hijackers ever met as a group. Agents instead have found they clustered together in 4- and 5-man teams around Boston, Newark, and Washington just before the hijackings. And in Chicago, agents arrested a man on the terrorist watch list who was wanted in Boston on a year-old assault charge. Officials say first indications are Nabil al-Mabar was not involved in the attack, but they want to make sure.
Further investigation needs to be done clearly with regard to how he came into the country, what his status is.
And finally, the FBI says it hopes to have the cockpit recording translated within a few days and will make a determination then over whether to release it to the public. Dan?
Thanks, Jim Stewart. Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan told Congress today the September 11th attacks brought much of the U.S. economy to a standstill. But he said he's confident the economy will recover. But if so, it may be a long road back, as CBS News business correspondent Anthony Mason reports.
The winds of war are whipping fear through the markets. It lingers over the Dow, which dropped another 380 points today.
Sell them all.
In the 4 days since the markets reopened, the Dow has now lost more than 1,200 points, 12.8%. The NASDAQ is off even more.
Call them up, Kook.
From Lehman Brothers' emergency trading floor across the river from its damaged headquarters, Matt Johnson says the volatility is vicious.
The market is extremely emotional right now. You really can't have a rule book. All these events are unprecedented.
The plain truth is all 285 million people in America, and really everybody in the world, is poor.
On Capitol Hill today, the Treasury Secretary and the Federal Reserve Chairman assessed the damage to the economy.
There are a combination of forces impinging on the American economy, which we cannot at this particular stage disentangle.
New numbers show new trouble in two sectors that have kept the economy afloat. Housing starts were down nearly 7% in August to their lowest level in 10 months. And retailers today cut their profit forecast for the fourth quarter in half. One major credit card company told the Treasury Secretary transactions were off 20% last week.
And I think that's clearly to be expected because people stayed home and looked at their television. They were heartbroken. But we will recover.
But recovery can't begin till stability is restored. While Congress rushes to consider more tax cuts or spending increases, the Fed chairman cautioned
that it's far more important to be right than quick.
But already this week, $1.2 trillion in market value has been wiped away. And Chairman Greenspan says it will take a week or two to determine exactly how much damage has been done to the economy. Dan?
Thanks, Anthony. The economy's prime source of fuel, consumer spending, has slowed since the attack. Fear appears to be at least partly to blame. One reason the president tonight is expected to try to reassure the public. CBS's Cynthia Bowers looks tonight at consumers and the fear factor.
The jetliners may be back in the skies, but many Americans remain grounded with no desire to go anywhere.
It's very hard to scare consumers to hide underneath their tables and not come out. Well, in fact, this is one of the few things that would do it.
Since last week's terror attacks, the travel industry has nearly stopped in its tracks, and tourist destinations around the country look like ghost towns. Normally, Bourbon Street in New Orleans is packed. Not anymore. With more than half its hotel rooms empty, South Florida is losing at least $20 million a day, and layoffs are mounting.
This is kind of the equivalent to Hurricane Andrew coming straight through downtown Miami. Is that severe?
September casino numbers aren't in, but it's a sure bet revenue in Las Vegas will be down. Shockwaves are being felt as far away as Hawaii, which is experiencing its worst economic disaster ever. In Chicago, a big convention town, hotels usually booked solid are now empty, and cab drivers sit idle for hours.
There is no business. There is nobody in the hotel. We've been here 5 hours now. There is nothing.
Along Michigan Avenue, the same jitters people are feeling about their security are now showing up in their spending at levels even people in the retail business find unnerving.
I've never seen a time when
so many Americans have no interest at all in buying anything except going to the grocery store or going to their druggist to get their prescriptions.
For months now, consumer spending has propped up a weak economy. But now, with a recession likely and a war looming, Washington will have to take over. Cynthia Bowers, CBS News, Chicago.
Up next on this special expanded edition of the CBS Evening News, bin Laden reportedly gets an invitation from the Taliban, but the U.S. has its own plan for him.
Mom, how many Tums did you take right in front of the wedding planner? You snuck one, too. It was a Pepsid Complete. Is that the same as Pepsid AC? No, there's nothing else like Pepsid Complete. It works fast like Tums, but it lasts for hours like Pepsid AC. So your heartburn goes away and then stays away. Chewable? Calcium? I gotta try this.
Decisions?
Tony, fabulous.
Pepsid Complete. Just one, and heartburn's done.
Have you tried the anchovy cookies?
Oh, yeah.
And the jalapeno dip?
Abner, we're rich.
We're rich?
It's our new litter. It's got diamonds in it.
You are mistaken, my friends. The diamonds are odor-absorbing crystals in new Tidy Cats Crystals Blend.
Whatever.
New Tidy Cats Crystals Blend.
29. 30. 30.
Now at Red Lobster, you can get 30 mouth-watering shrimp for just $9.99. Red Lobster, go overboard.
After 26 years of marriage, Tom and I realized that we're a little different from each other, except for one thing. Our doctor says we should both take a single 81-milligram St. Joseph aspirin, the dosage doctors recommend most for aspirin therapy.
Oh, what a day.
The seating capacity of a minivan.
Where is it? I don't see it.
Capabilities of an SUV. The smooth ride of a luxury car. All in one totally innovative package. The all-new Buick Rendezvous.
Guess we're not in Kansas anymore.
Buick Rendezvous. It's all good.
Will you check your roots?
Come closer. You brush, so you can't have denture odor, right? Wrong. Brushing can miss odor-causing food particles. So use Polident. Polident powers away food particles brushing misses. See? Polident for better odor control.
Life is like a sport. The impact of each step impacts more than just your feet. But new Stride Guard insoles absorb 50% more heel impact than these Dr. Scholl's. Take more impact in stride. New Stride Guard insoles.
Pete Sampras knows about One-A-Day's new active multivitamin with more B vitamins and ginseng to enhance energy. One-A-Day. Get active, stay active.
The United States is demanding that Afghanistan turn over Osama bin Laden. It has been demanding that for over a week. Muslim clerics advising the Taliban today say they invited Osama bin Laden to leave. CBS's Alan Pizzi reports from neighboring Pakistan. Bin Laden, if he is still in Afghanistan, figures to decline that invitation.
The Taliban cleric's invitation to Osama bin Laden to leave Afghanistan voluntarily is the first sign they may be willing to compromise. By using the word invite, they can claim their Islamic beliefs prohibit them from declaring bin Laden persona non grata and plead that it's not their fault if he doesn't go. But an Arabic journalist who has interviewed bin Laden says he will not give up.
I don't believe Osama bin Laden is the man who will allow the Americans to capture him and try him. I think the man would like to die as a martyr.
People in the Afghan capital, Kabul, seem to know the Bush administration would reject the offer even before it was made. I'm afraid for my family, this man says. Kabul is becoming a ghost town, and those who can't leave are digging shelters. If the U.S. attacks, the clerics have issued another fatwa calling for a jihad or holy war against America and its allies. Any fatwa issued by the hardline Taliban would be ignored by Muslims in most countries allied to the U.S. But such edicts aren't aimed at countries, they're a call to the faithful. And it would only take a handful of determined men to wreak havoc at some of the bases that could be used by U.S. forces here. This is the outer perimeter of the Peshawar Air Base, the place from which Gary Powers took off on his ill-fated U-2 spy plane flight in 1960. And Rawalpindi's base has unguarded, flimsy-looking gates and unmanned observation posts overlooking a busy main road. a road accessible to the small fraction of Pakistanis who share the anti-American anger of these demonstrators. And as the recent history of suicide attacks on U.S. forces has shown, that's all it takes. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, Islamabad.
Pizzi reported from just south of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Just north of Afghanistan is Tajikistan, which has a defense treaty with Russia and which serves as a safe haven for Afghan forces fighting the Taliban. CBS's Elizabeth Palmer filed this late report from Tajikistan's capital, not far from the Afghan border.
For almost a decade, 10,000 Russian soldiers have patrolled this remote region to keep Muslim extremists from invading the former Soviet Republic of Tajikistan. Since the attacks in New York and Washington, these troops are on red alert. But will they fight the Taliban in a joint operation with America? Russia continues to hide behind a diplomatic smokescreen and won't say for sure. But another American ally has emerged here, the anti-Taliban opposition known as the Northern Alliance. Its army already controls large areas of northern Afghanistan. Today, they say the American government asked for their help.
We have artillery, we have tanks, we have rockets, and also we have fighters.
Perhaps most importantly, they have the kind of intelligence information that comes from fighting the Taliban on their own turf for years. Negotiations that could make that experience pay off should get underway tomorrow. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, Dushanbe, Tajikistan.
The CBS Evening News will continue in a moment.
When I started having hot flashes and night sweats at menopause, my doctor recommended hormone replacement therapy, but I didn't listen.
Up to 20% of a woman's expected lifetime bone loss occurs in the years following menopause.
A year later, I went back to my doctor and found I'd shrunk an inch. I went on HRT, and I've been on it for years. My hot flashes and night sweats, gone. I feel great.
HRT is not for all women. Talk to your doctor about the benefits and risks.
The time to protect your future is now.
Mission accomplished.
Hi.
What's for lunch?
Chicken and stars.
Condensed soup? The kids are grown up. We could eat like adults now. There's a better tasting soup. Progresso chicken noodle has tender pieces of all white meat chicken and bigger slices of hearty vegetables with just the right seasonings. See the difference?
Much better.
You're never too old to grow up.
Oh, really?
It's time to go to the better taste of Progresso.
So, Flo, Tums Ultra or Pepsid Complete?
Dose for dose, Tums Ultra neutralizes twice as much acid as Pepsid's acid. Yet the Pepsid costs much more.
Tums, Harry. You can feel better now and save enough to leave a nice big tip.
Tums!
Why do I rent from Enterprise? For more cargo room. More people room. Or more headroom. Enterprise. So easy, it's like having a second car. Or third.
Pick Enterprise. We'll pick you up.
In the old days, athlete's foot meant using Lotrimin AF or Tenactin for 4 whole weeks.
Who does that? Today, they're out. Because Lamisil AT changed everything. Lamisil AT kills the fungus with just 1 week's use.
Do you really have 4 weeks to use those other guys?
When your feet itch and burn, using Lamisil AT 1 week keeps you athlete's foot free for 3 months. Those old-timers, they don't promise that.
It's in a league all its own.
Lamisil AT, the best way to cure athlete's foot.
For all those who have difficulty bathing, and for all those who care for them, take comfort.
Take comfort, take comfort. There's Comfort Bath, take comfort.
Comfort Bath. Thick as a washcloth, disposable Comfort Bath can be microwaved for a warm, soothing bath. Comfort Bath leaves skin soft and smooth.
There's Comfort Bath, take comfort.
Look for Comfort Bath at your drugstore.
Again today, the families most directly touched by the attack on America went on with the rituals of everyday life. They went back to school, they gave birth, but mostly they went to funerals. In New York City, friends and family said farewell to 42-year-old Timothy John Cogman. He was senior managing director of the bond trading firm Cantor Fitzgerald. Cogman is one of almost 700 Cantor Fitzgerald employees believed lost in the Trade Center attack. In the space of 1 week, Jenna Jacobs became a widow and a mother. Gabriel Benjamin Jacobs, 7 pounds, 10 ounces, entered the world Monday. 6 days after his father, Ari, died at the Trade Center. Baby Gabriel has his father's reddish hair. For thousands of New York City school children, back to school today meant going to a different school. Their own schools remain closed because they are too close to the Trade Center. Other schools, already tight for space, took them in. They did it with staggered shifts, shorter class periods, and open arms.
Fight wrinkles all day with Rock Retinol Active Pure Day. It protects against sun damage with SPF 15, and Rock visibly reduces the appearance of wrinkles by 40% in 12 weeks. Rock, we keep our promises.
Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Vioxx, a prescription medicine available from your doctor. Or call 1-877-98-VIOXX for information. Vioxx.
It responds to the power of your voice. It lets you focus on what lies ahead.
OnStar Personal Calling.
Call Commissioner Gordon. With hands-free dialing, you can concentrate on more important things, like driving. Gordon here. I'm on my way. Voice-activated calling from OnStar.
My business is more than just a business to me. It's my passion. So when my doctor told me I have asthma, I went to cbshealthwatch.com. One click on Smart Search gives me exactly what I need to know about controlling my asthma, from medications to new treatments. With CBS Health Watch, I spend less time searching and more time doing the things I love.
Save time, get answers. Visit cbshealthwatch.com.
Yoo-hoo! Take that laxative and you miss the bus. Huh? It contains harsh stimulants that could cause cramps.
Sounds worse than constipation.
Phillips is different. It's stimulant-free, so you don't have to feel worse before you feel better.
That's great.
Why do I eat healthy choice? Sesame chicken. Beef tips portobello.
Chicken parmesan.
Why?
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 Because it tastes great.
Because it tastes great.
Why? Why?
Because my body
My body needs balanced nutrition. Why do I eat healthy choice?
Why?
Why?
That's why.
That's why.
That's why.
The Road to Recovery, the search for those responsible, and Washington's plan of action. America Fights Back, tomorrow morning on The Early Show with Bryant Gumbel and Jane Clayson.
The rescue and recovery operations go on tonight in the rubble of New York's World Trade Center. It's rained most of the day. The toll of casualties in the terror attacks grows. The United States prepares tonight for a long, all-out war on terrorism. U.S. fighting forces are moving into position in striking distance of Afghanistan and Iraq, and for that matter, Iran. In just a few minutes, President Bush will stand before Congress and the American people to try to rally support for the battle and to try to reassure a public still in shock and seething. A critical moment in American history. I'll be back in a minute with the President's address. Dan Rather reporting for the CBS Evening News.
For news 24 hours a day, CBS.com on the internet and on our interactive partner, America Online, at keyword CBS News.
This is CBS.
How can you have calls to your office reach you on your wireless phone? How can you retrieve your email by the sound of your voice? How can you write one check for it all? Now, only with Quest Wireless, get one number for your office and wireless phone, voice-activated email, and one convenient bill for it all. Anything's possible when you have an advanced network. And when you get your phone out of the trunk. Call 1-800-222-3772 and get 1,800 shared minutes. That's $29.99 a month per phone for 3 phones.
What helps Papa Murphy's win Pizza Chain of the Year? Dough made fresh daily? You betcha. The freshest quality ingredients? Always. 100% real cheese? Oh yeah. But what really made it happen? You did. Because they know their pizza tastes best when it comes hot out of your oven. They make it, you bake it. It's that easy. To celebrate, get a medium super fresh perfect pizza for just $5.99. Family size it for just $2 more. Papa Murphy's Take and Bake, pizza chain of the year.
The Twin Towers are in ruins. The Pentagon wounded to the core. The nation with a broken heart and a long line of heroes. Now, taking aim at the enemy. The president delivers an historic address to Congress and the American people. The call to arms is sounded. The mission, the danger, the sacrifice. A CBS News special report. The president addresses Congress and the nation.
Good evening. Dan Rather reporting from CBS News World Headquarters in New York. It is 9 days now since terrorists on a mission of murder turned commercial jetliners into missiles and took down the World Trade Towers in New York and tore open the Pentagon in Washington. Estimates of the dead, missing, and injured now total more than 13,000. Casualties in a new kind of war. Very shortly, President George W. Bush will appear before the United States Congress, meeting in joint session and a nationwide television audience, to say how the United States will fight this war and to ask for public patience and support. A defining moment in the history of this nation and the Bush presidency. Now, as part of the fight against terrorism aimed at the United States, the president is expected to announce that he's creating a cabinet-level office of Homeland Defense. He will name Pennsylvania Governor Tom Ridge to head it. Whether he speaks about that tonight, we'll simply have to see. We are awaiting the announcement from the Sergeant of Arms.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
You saw the pictures a moment ago of First Lady Laura Bush in the balcony. On her right is the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Tony Blair. On her left, the Mayor of New York, Rudolph Giuliani. Now, Vice President Dick Cheney, in his role as President of the Senate, the Vice President is, of course, the President of the Senate, he would usually sit behind the President when a President addresses Congress. However, Cheney will not be in the House chamber tonight. The official reason given is security. His seat is to be filled by the President pro tem of the Senate, Democrat Robert Byrd of West Virginia. And there's also, by tradition, always one cabinet member missing. One cabinet member is held back. In addition to Vice President Dick Cheney not being in the chamber tonight, Tommy Thompson, Secretary of Health and Human Resources, the former governor, is the cabinet member in absentia this evening. Bob Schieffer is at the Capitol. Bob, just before the doors opened, just before we heard the announcement of the President of the United States, was one of those moments to remember in the history of the country.
Oh, it certainly is, Dan. And I'll tell you, Dan, as we see this very warm reception that President Bush is getting, the surest and safest bet on the card tonight is that whatever President Bush says, he is going to be wildly cheered. Because this Congress is unified. Well, I can't remember when it has been as unified as it has been over this last week. There was a unity that began last Tuesday after the attacks on the Twin Towers in New York. Shortly after that, people in the Capitol were evacuated because they thought the Capitol itself was under attack. The Speaker of the House, Denny Hastert, told me this afternoon, from that moment, we were united.
So seated behind the President tonight will be the Speaker of the House, Speaker Hastert, and as we mentioned earlier, Senator Bobby Byrd of West Virginia. As is tradition, there's considerable applause before the president speaks, but this will go beyond tradition tonight. And as Bob Schieffer noted, very few Americans are alive today who have seen this kind of unified support behind the president, bipartisan support behind the president, that we've viewed these last few days and are viewing tonight. One would have to go back to at least the time of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor to find anything comparable.
Members of Congress, I have the high privilege, the distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States.
More applause as Speaker Hastert presents the President of the United States. Including the cheering are guests from the New York City Fire and Police Departments. Also present in this audience, family members of some victims and armed service members from the Pentagon.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. President pro tempore, members of Congress, and fellow Americans. In the normal course of events, presidents come to this chamber to report on the State of the Union. Tonight, no such report is needed. It has already been delivered by the American people. We have seen it in the courage of passengers who rushed terrorists to save others on the ground. Passengers like an exceptional man named Todd Beamer. And would you please help me welcome his wife, Lisa Beamer, here tonight.
Mrs. Beamer, the widow of Todd Beamer, he was one of the hero passengers on Flight 93 that crashed in Southwest Pennsylvania.
We have seen the state of our union in the endurance of rescuers working past exhaustion. We've seen the unfurling of flags, the lighting of candles, the giving of blood, the saying of prayers in English, Hebrew, and Arabic. We have seen the decency of a loving and giving people who have made the grief of strangers their own. My fellow citizens, for the last 9 days, the entire world has seen for itself the state of our union, and it is strong. Tonight, we are a country awakened to danger and called to defend freedom. Our grief has turned to anger, and anger to resolution. Whether we bring our enemies to justice or bring justice to our enemies, justice will be done. I thank the Congress for its leadership at such an important time. All of America was touched on the evening of the tragedy to see Republicans and Democrats join together on the steps of this Capitol, singing "God Bless America."